Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video, and today we're going to be briefly looking at the 2021 New York City mayoral Democratic primary. And I'm going to get right into it. I don't have a ton of time on my hands. I know I'm late because I believe 3 days ago now the race was called for Eric Adams. We're going to briefly take a look at the coalitions and see what happens. So, first of all, this was a really, really close race. Eric Adams only won the race by around 8,000 votes, and it really came down to it. And it was crazy because, on election night, people actually prematurely called for Eric Adams. They said he was winning by 9 on election night. They said there's no path to victory, realistically, for either Catherine Garcia or Maya Wiley because Adams just has too big of a lead, even if ranked choice voting helps the runner up. He just says too much. He has too big of a lead. Then I believe a week or so later, we saw some really good preliminary results for Catherine Garcia that said she's catching up, closing the gap much quicker than expected. That even within a couple rounds, she's only down by 4. And there was a point where people started to say Catherine Garcia is favored. And I remember seeing that the Board of Elections, which had managed the race terribly, they finally dropped the results a couple of weeks later. And I went on Twitter, and everyone's talking about Catherine Garcia is going to be the next mayor of New York City. And I'll admit, even on tweet, I thought Catherine Garcia was going to win. I said, is Garcia favored at this point? Because at that point, the betting odds she had, I think at best chance, she had like a 75% chance of winning that race. And then as we saw more ballots come in, we saw some bad results for Garcia, as the final ballots trickled in, and Adams held on to that narrow lead, and he's going to win this race by around a point, which obviously down from his 9-point lead on election night, but still an impressive victory for Eric Adams when ranked choice voting all said and done. And he did this with a very diverse coalition. He won Staten Island, which I think is mostly off of the moderate Democrats who live there, and getting a couple Trump voters to come out and vote for him. Staten Island being the most conservative borough of New York City by far. He won Brooklyn, which is another more diverse borough than the city, and he did well there. Brooklyn is an area that Democrats have always done well in, but we usually see establishment Democrats do better there. Queens is another one. Eric Adams, I think that was the borough he won by the most. He won it by around 14, and he won that by the most. Or no, sorry, I forgot. The Bronx was his best borough. I talked about this on the election night stream with my good friend Pro Political Talk, and it was his best borough. It's also the most diverse borough. It has the borough's highest percentage of Black voters and Hispanic voters, and Adams did very well there. The only borough that he lost that Catherine Garcia won was Manhattan, which was her home borough. We all expected that, and Eric Adams came in third place, and it was overall a really bad showing for him in Manhattan, but he still did very well overall across the city, and he won the race. He was favored. I said on the live stream, I said I think Eric Adams is going to win, but still an overperformance nevertheless, and it's impressive because this is such a crowded field, and it was really a back and forth race. For most of the time we thought Andrew Yang was going to run away with it. Then in the final weeks we saw Eric Adams take the lead in the polls. There was a brief period in time where Maya Wiley had potentially a really good chance at winning. She was favored at one point, so it was a really brutal primary, and everyone has conceded, which is good because after 2020, you really don't want to see a repeat of everyone saying that they won in just a really crazy election in New York City. Now, I do think that the New York City Board of Elections handled the race very poorly, and it really stains. You give a bad reputation for ranked choice voting, which I think is a good system. I think fundamentally ranked choice voting is a good system because Eric Adams, he would have won the primary with 31% of the vote, and we really would have been saying shoulda, woulda, coulda. But when they count up the ranked choice ballots, he won 50.5% of the vote, and that's, I think, the better system, and definitely more accurately reflects what the voters of New York want. So, yeah. Now, briefly taking a look at the Republican primary, Curtis Sliwa won this race. Sliwa, he only won 41,000 votes, and he basically got the same amount of votes as Scott Stringer, who came in fifth place in the Democratic primary, and this was, I guess, a good showing for him. He was always favored. Fernando Mateo, I didn't know he was heading into the election, and so had all the big name endorsements. So that that was a really strong showing for him in this primary, though. And I do believe he got the most votes from Staten Island, which says a lot because Staten Island, even though it's the least populated borough of New York City, it gave him the most votes because it's the most conservative, even more than Queens. So. Yeah, there were a couple races. We saw Brad Lander the progressive Democrat win the New York City comptroller race. It was very close. He did poorest in the most diverse borough of the Bronx, as we know. Black voters in New York City tend to they're obviously heavily Democratic voters, but they tend to vote more moderately. Staten Island, obviously being a more conservative borough, it makes sense that Leander lost that. Then we saw the Republican primary there. We saw some Democratic primary results in the district attorney race, where we saw Alvin Bragg narrowly beat Tolley for Eddie and Weinstein. And what was interesting is that this race was really unexpected, because Eliza Orleans was supposed to be in the top three. She had a very online campaign. She had 150,000 Twitter followers. Dan Court raised the second most money, but he finished last in the race. So this was a really interesting race to take a look at, and a shocking result there. I expected Bragg to win, him being the most well known, but you really thought that Orleans and Court would have done better, and Weinstein and Abushi would have done worse. So yeah, this was a super rush video. My apologies if I talk too fast, but that's my brief analysis of what happened in New York. I know I'm late. I did post. I think 5 minutes before it was called by New York Times. I posted on Instagram. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, please do. It's at UEP_YouTube. And if you don't follow me on Twitter, please do that as well. It's also at UEP_YouTube. Thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day.